Great, thank you. Members and guests, please join me in welcoming those who are joining by live stream. My name is Helen Reeves, and I'm a director of the Canadian Club of Toronto and your host today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Let me also say welcome and thank you to the Young Presidents Organization Gold and YPO Maple Leaf members who are joining us today to support one of their own. Thank you for joining. Our season at the club is off to a very strong start. So far, we've featured elected officials, financial experts, and business leaders. This diversity of speakers reflects our commitment to bringing you a wide range of guests on issues that matter to you. We are grateful to sponsors for supporting our events. I'd like to acknowledge today's sponsor, Morneau Chappelle, represented here today by my colleague, Susan Marsh. Susan, thank you very much. The Canadian Club appreciates your support. Now on to the main event. I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker today. With more than 12,000 employees and a sophisticated network of shipping agents, facilities, and centers, Purolator is focused on delivering service. Its vision, as visions should be, is inspirational and aspirational. It says, "We make Canada stronger by delivering on customers' promises." And the leader responsible for that vision is John Ferguson, President and CEO of Purolator. He is taking the freight, packaging, and logistics business into the future with a very aggressive strategy. It's a 5-year, $1 billion investment plan to revolutionize the way Purolator delivers across our country and around the world. The plan, which is called Delivering the Future, will transform the digital experience for customers and will make major shifts in Purolator's approach to delivery, which today means that he needs to keep 135,000 customers happy each single day. In his distinguished career, John has been involved in all aspects of logistics and transportation modes: road, truck, rail, ocean, and air. Prior to Purolator, he was president and CEO of SCI Logistics, and today he's also actively engaged on industry boards and currently serves as a director of SCI Logistics and InnovaPost. He previously held director roles with the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Association and the Ontario Truckers Association, just to name a few. Moderating today's conversation is Howard Green, the best-selling author of 3 books. Howard spent 3 days in broadcasting and was a founding... 30 years, okay. 3 decades, 30 years. 3 decades. Sorry about that, Howard. And he was a founding anchor of Business News Network, where he hosted Headline. The Canadian Club of Toronto is pleased to pass the podium to Howard Green and John Ferguson.
Thanks very much for the introduction. Great to be with you, John. Thanks, Helen. 3 days should inspire confidence, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm also on YPO and I'm 25.
You know, I'm an old school kind of guy with notes, and at the top of my notes it says necktie with 2 exclamation marks. I said to John before we came, you know, Canadian Club, it's kind of a necktie kind of place, even though the world's going more and more tieless. And then my old friend, the president of the Canadian Club, Bruce Sellery, not wearing a tie.
Yeah.
Good to see you. So, John, it's great to be here with you. I want to get a little bit of history first. I mean, we saw some stuff in the video there, and we'll get to Purolator, obviously, the meat of it. But a bit of history about you. You've got an amazing history in the industry, and it started really when you were a kid, right? Why don't you tell us where you grew up and what you did for your summer job, and we'll take it from there.
It's quite a weird story how I ended up here, but I was my university years, I was a student customs officer down in Niagara. And that was sort of the coveted job back in those years. You either got to GM or you got to be a student customs officer. And this was sort of the late 80s, around the time of free trade. And so I would work on the customs line and have to interview people that would cross my line and their citizenship, what do you have to declare, and so on. And I kept seeing these trading businesses, these global forwarder customs brokerage businesses that were really starting to do well with free trade. And there was this one particular owner that was really, you know, he'd like to show his wealth off. And he'd come by my line in this big white Cadillac with bullhorns on it. And it was like, you know, sort of out of the 80s. And I was about 20, he was about 70, and he was already sold his business or partly sold his business, and that business was called PBB, where I started. He came through my customs line, and I was a young, kind of cocky kid, and I just said, I've got the badge. I think I'll ask him some questions about the industry. So I ended up asking him about trade and his business and, you know, forego the what do you have to declare questions. He was coming back from the U.S. He was safe, I thought. So anyways, we went through this process, and he said, you know what? Why don't you come by and look at a career at our company? And so that's how I actually started in this industry, is through a customs job where the owner came through my line and decided, he was an entrepreneurial guy, and said, you know what, I'll give you a chance, come by. And I...
You interviewed him?
I did interview him on the line, and the guy that was next in line, the car, as you know, their cars were lined up in those years. There was no fast lanes. There was a whole family, and they were really teed off. Like it was 15 minutes, and I thought to myself, I can't remember who it was. I think it was some yuppies from Oakville, probably. So I decided, come on in, we'll check you out. So yeah, but it was, it really, you know, it was quite funny how, and I tell it to my kids all the time, where you start, you never know where you'll end up. And in those years, I remember seeing Purolator, and Purolator is almost a 60-year-old company, and I really was at the front lines in that summer job of global trade and where transportation was going. And
you worked a lot of other places too. Before we get to Purolator, you worked for Schneider, and you knew Schneider. You told me once you got Schneiderized down there, and you
used to call it wearing orange underwear. But yeah, so I went from PBB ended up becoming part of Livingston. In those years, we were opening up new markets. It was very entrepreneurial, very Canadian. Did a lot of work in China, led China trade missions before even Team Canada did. That's something, so very unique experience. And then I went to a big US-based transportation company called Schneider. I remember going down to Green Bay, their head office, and I thought, it's transportation, asset-based. And I went into this huge auditorium. There was a bunch of PhD-type people. If anybody's ever been to see it, it's mind-blowing. And this was a lot of years ago now, but I remember seeing the metrics, and I said, is that right? The fuel they spent per day was over US $1 million. And then that's when I learned about the importance of metrics, and we call it radio buttons in Purolator. For every outer route mile or every you know, empty lane that you service, there's massive cost implications when you have a scale business. But with Schneider, it was run by a guy named Don Schneider, and that's where I learned a lot about leading with no ego and being humble. He was a legend in the game. First, one of the only trucking companies to not be non-unionized, which was a major, when you hear the stories of what went on back then to become non-unionized, it's unbelievable. But he was a guy that would say, you know, the corporate people are all kind of, you know, wasteful. The drivers are what matter. The drivers would come to the head office and they'd be treated like royalty. I remember did a lot of work. I don't know if Victoria's here from Home Depot, but a lot of us were running around Bentonville and Walmart at those times. They were the big player where Amazon is today. I remember Don Schneider and J.B. Hunt and Sam Walton would get together in some diner down in the U.S.
Cheap lunch.
Cheap lunch, and they were the titans of business, but that's what went on. But great experience to learn about big asset-based transportation. There's nothing like the experience in the U.S. as well compared to Canada. I remember going down and the first guy said, "What do you know about trucking?" I didn't even know I was a trucker actually, but and then I looked at the network in the U.S. compared to Canada, which is like this big line with prairies in between. Very different experience, yeah.
So what about let's jump way ahead. What about the leap to Purolator? It was probably the last place you thought you'd end up. You've been there 3 years. How'd you make the leap? And it was a huge leap, right? Because this is a $2 billion a year revenue company. You're making $180 million a year. This is
We
big
weren't
stuff.
at the time, yeah. So they called me into Purolator to effectively try to improve the business. There was a lot of years where there was somewhat instability. A number of CEOs had changed out. And it was really a cusp, I guess, of e-commerce.
Were you underestimated?
Yes. I remember, and I talked to the YPO group that's here today, there was this big question about, you've never run a business this big. Hard to do in Canada. There's only so many of them. The businesses I was running, 250 million-ish. So there's a lot of questions about, you know, could you handle this big of a business? And I remember at the time, I got the sort of facts about the opportunity, and I thought to myself, wow, can't do any worse than this. So, you know, really confident. But I thought at the time, I actually had a playbook. And the reason I mentioned those early days at PBB and On the Border and everything else, I really felt like my career had custom made me for this. Coming back into Purolator, I thought, you know, I really understand the ground floor of this business. I knew the salespeople from way back when. I knew the markets they served. And I also knew a lot about the future to come. And so I had a game plan that I thought was guaranteed. And I remember one board member saying, all you have to do is cut the coffee budget and you'll make your number. He jokingly said, it's a scale business, don't you know how much opportunity is there?
But give us a flavor for we saw a bit of it in the video, and Helen mentioned a few facts in her intro, but, you know, give us some of the vital stats and what a typical truck run is, what the company faces every day. I mean, parcels are emotional things. You know, when you want your parcel, you want it. It's sensitive stuff. Like, give us a flavor.
There's a lot to that, but let me start just Purolator. You saw a bit of who we are. I don't think people understand, first, we're a Canadian company. We've been around almost 60 years, almost 12,000 employees now, 170 terminals. We have a pretty sizable U.S. business with 30 locations. We've been in cross-border trade. Those years when I was just a student customs officer, Purolator was doing cross-border trade before even free trade, which exploded in 88 or whenever NAFTA was, 89 now. So you jumped on three things here, so maybe one at a time, but just what Purolator is today, we're a combination of a large B2B player, so a lot of our clients are here today, Wajax, Transcontinental, but there is a lot of e-commerce business that's coming, and that was part of the wave that we've been running, and there's been questions about how much of our investments is related to e-commerce. In fact, there's a lot happening there. We'll get to the e-commerce, but so today, great culture, big health and safety culture at Purolator, very Canadian in terms of its values, culture, diversity. There's nowhere, no town you're going to find where there isn't Purolator. I mean, I have family from a lot of the small towns and even way up north, and there's one Purolator driver, been with us 30 years, goes to all the community parties. I come to town like, oh, meet your driver, you know, and he's part of the community. So it is quite an amazing Canadian success story, but you were...
Yeah, no, I was wondering, but give people a flavor for the kind of truck runs, or
truck runs.
You know, what's in the truck and how important are these items? What are they?
So there's a lot to that. So our couriers will do upwards of 150 stops, and they're doing pickups and deliveries. But
In a day?
In a day. There's a lot to that, though. And, you know, when I first came to Purolator, one of the onboarding things we do is we do a route ride. And so they set me up with a courier called Becca, who has been with us a long time. I'm sure she's the best. They would have set me up with the best courier that we have in the whole fleet, probably. So I went out, you know, jeans and all that, did the run, and I can tell you they hustle. It's unbelievable. But what I found was the relationship they had. And so I was doing Midtown Toronto. I picked Midtown Toronto, and we're running in apartment buildings. I'm learning about Amazon at the time. Amazon was just starting with us. And I got into a dentist's office, a small dentist's office, and literally it was so small, the patient was getting his implant as I was coming in with our courier. And it was probably, Sue, who would it have been? Henry Shine, our client. So we're literally walking in with the implant. And so they're like, oh, hi, Becca, and who's this guy with you? And they were, this is the new CEO.
And
This
the
is the
patient's
CEO.
in the chair
Patient's in
waiting for
the chair, waiting for the implant. And it's that small. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, they're introducing me as the new CEO. And they're like, yeah, right. They didn't believe it. So they said, so good luck with your training. I hope you're as good as her. But to this day, she jokes about it. Like, no one thinks you're the CEO. Like, they don't believe it. They think you're just.
You are wearing a tie.
Well,
You know,
yeah, I don't normally. But anyway, so the packages today, though, as we get into B2C, are very emotional. I can go to an event like this and sit with the highest CEO. You can name the company. They're probably here today. And I'll talk inevitably to the spouse who goes on about some emotional package that either didn't get there or something happened at the front door. And that is where the talk is, not the 99% we do for the business to business who's very data oriented, the customer emotional piece. Even today, I met some of the YPOers. Oh, you know, you come into my apartment, this happens.
and higher expectations.
Higher expectations. The consumer market, and we have Lori Weston here today, and we're doing a lot with Cadillac Fairview, and we've got a lot of plans to improve the customer access. But the consumer part of this business was a major shift for Purolator, and we've gotten way better at it, and we're going to get even way better in the future at it.
Is it changing day by day, though? I mean, you know, as Amazon becomes more and more prevalent, as e-commerce continues to explode. I mean, my wife ordered a bed frame from Amazon the other day.
We call those the uglies, by the way. Yeah. You know, and I want to come back to the emotion of a package before we end here. But basically, it is changing the level of customer expectation, the amount of social media, the amount of visibility to something that doesn't go perfectly is something. Amazon themselves are a whole other, we could have a whole 2-hour session on Amazon alone, but they are making us better. They are the disruptor, but many are as well. There's lots of great innovation going on in e-commerce and what's going on, and we're also innovating. You saw some of the things we've done. That mobile quick stop is actually a really neat idea that we came up with. Amazon had never seen it globally. And the funny story, honestly, is that we took a bunch of old trucks that were our board jokes that they might not even have motors in them. We just tow them somewhere. But we did take basically a depreciated asset, package it up, turn it into what looks like a food truck on wheels, and move it. We started at Liberty Village, of all places. Just put it down there and said, you know what? You want to get your package at the foot at our truck? That door opened up. You can see it. And you can get your package. We did this actually at Christmas time, and we had, you know, people dressed up giving away cookies. We made it more of a PR experience, but clients really loved this. They said it was a great innovation. Now we've rolled these out all over the place. Now they're actually mobile, and we did this at the Scarborough GO train station, right? So we'll move it around, and the idea is to make it convenient for the consumer. Get your package wherever you're going to be, and I know that's a big issue with people, and we're trying to get way better at that.
What about the peaks? Like, I mean, Cyber Monday, for instance, I think you did 1.3 million deliveries, different packages last year, presumably lots more this year.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you handle those peaks, those intense moments, those tsunamis that occur, and you know, in the labor piece, for instance?
So yeah, it's funny, we do a lot with CFL, and Randy Ambrosi and I were out recently, and he's getting ready for Grey Cup. Super Bowl is getting ready. Peak is our Super Bowl. We talk about it all year. We plan for it. Last year we had to spike up and hire 2,000 people, if you can imagine, in 1 year, or slightly over a calendar year. what it takes to bring on that kind of labor, train them, have them meet Purolator standards, and then do a good job with mobility and all the things that go on.
And you're doing weekends and nights now too.
And we started a new quick ship service where it's effectively almost same day. That was something we announced as our $1 billion investment. Part of it was the launch of weekend and evening services. Again, we've had a network for a lot of years. It just runs, it's got a rhythm to it. Now you introduce a whole other network on weekends and evenings, conveniently when the customer's at home. But also, the world is now demanding 24/7. And we're watching these things in the US and around the world. And so we just have to be there. And so we've piloted that. And we have some customers even here today that are looking to do that with us. There's no doubt it's the future. And for us, it's two things. One, it's great for our customers' experience. And two, it has become a relief valve for peak. And peak is becoming peakier.
Peak being from Black Friday to Christmas?
Well, it really can start even sooner because you think the Asian inbound ocean flows are starting in the summer now. You're getting into back to school. We have now 2 of our clients. We have got Prime Days, Wayfair Days. You know, everybody's got days. So there's peaks that are happening throughout the year, and then we're getting hit hardest in Black Friday, what we call Week 48, which is our Super Bowl week or a Grey Cup week or whatever sporting event you want to call. And massive amounts of planning, lots of terminals, automation, people management. Of course, we got to watch health and safety, which is our #1 priority, and how we manage all of that, and even how we manage the type of business that we allow into the pipe, so to speak.
You know, I don't want to belabor this because we want to move to the technology and the investment, but there's a piece in the Wall Street Journal today about how the e-commerce explosion, i.e. Amazon, is really turning FedEx upside down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, how do you manage what is happening out there? Now you're doing this huge investment up in Rexdale, $300 million super hub. We'll get to that, but I mean, it seems to get more and more intense every day.
Yeah, that's the journalist in you bringing up FedEx on me, isn't it?
Yeah, I just read it today.
Yeah. It's true. The Amazon story with FedEx in the U.S. is quite something. If you aren't familiar with it, FedEx and Amazon severed ties, effectively, basically saying Amazon is a future competitor, drawing the line in the sand and moving on, focusing on other business. Different in Canada. That's U.S. news, so we understand the reasons they're different than Canada. Remind me where we're going with this now?
Yeah, well, to how you handle it, like with the with this big investment that you're making.
Yeah, so the investment is made up. It's not just about Amazon or e-commerce. It's in fact for our entire business. But you think about healthcare even. I think Abbott Labs is here. Ann may be here today somewhere. There's Ann. Hi, Ann. I think this product really represents where healthcare is going as well. It's not just about the T-shirt from Amazon. They have a product called Freestyle, I think. Is that right? It's a diabetic band of some sort. I think it takes an epidermal layer versus blood for blood glucose measurement. That used to be done at a hospital or a lab or wherever else. I don't know, but I'm somewhere in medicine. All I know now is we've now converted those shipments to the home because now people are getting those in their home. You see the ads where somebody's out cycling and they get their number 6 point or something. We talk to so many businesses that are traditional businesses that are converting to B2C channels or omni-channel even, that we see all of our investment going to all of our businesses. Now, the investment we're making is $1 billion over the next 5 years, which is unprecedented for us and unprecedented, we think, in Canada. It includes a super hub up beside Humber College.
What's a super hub?
This is the video. This is a little internal video. If you can look at this, that's the land we have, 60-some acres. You'll see some of the key stats. We're talking about a major sort automation center. 60% of our volume will go through it. This is what inside, this is a bunch of schematics of what a hub looks like. Basically, it's a complex way of taking 1 million packages and moving it out to 200-some terminals across Canada and sorting them to a household at one site. This is me talking about it somewhere here.
You have a future in broadcasting.
Wow. So
tell us more about the level of automation. I mean, each parcel, it would seem, would have tons of data. attached to it. I mean, what does that mean for you?
So the other big part of our investment is in technology. And sometimes I wonder whether we are a people business, but our CIO who's here would probably say, oh, we might be a technology business. He's talking about concepts like not just ship to home, but ship to phone now. So a major investment in mobility. With mobility becomes data. We're scanning all the time. We like to say that a package is like a human and that it has a heartbeat, it has blood pressure, it has all these things. In a package, there's data. There's amazing data for a company to capture. And we're looking at AI. Some of the neat things, I'll just give you one that I think we're working on that I think is really neat in terms of customer experience. A courier goes in to a residence every day, they drop a package in a certain spot. That spot might be next to a shed. An image is taken of that. Those images are collected many times over many deliveries, say 40 deliveries now. Now through AI, you can take an image of that shed location and look for a variance in advance. So Jeff Green, who runs our customer experience, and they're working with our IT folks to say, when there's an anomaly, proactively, let's get ahead of it rather than someone calling up saying, you screwed up where I want my package delivered. And that's done through that kind of photo recognition AI algorithm in the background. There are so many little innovations like that happening. I'd need an hour to talk about them all. But that's where the investment's one example of the technology and the data and the mobility device.
And remote signatures, and there's an e-bike in the lobby of
so the
hotel.
e-bike, it's funny that everybody loves this e-bike. They like to get on and ride it around. It's like a toy thing. We were joking, we put it in reception if you didn't see it. It's a really cool, it looks like something like out of a Batmobile cake or something. It's got a big windshield on it. But basically these things have zero emissions, so great for green, which is a big part of what we're doing and want to do. Great for downtown cores, great for what we call micro density, so like a university campus where you need to do a bunch of small urban deliveries. That box on it will hold 400 and some pounds, so it's quite robust. We did launch these in Montreal. There was a press conference you did with the mayor out there, who we've got a big partnership going with the province. And everybody, the big question was, what are you going to do in the winter? And, I know about, my daughter goes to McGill, so I know about the huge mountain that they have to climb to get up there. So we're working out some of those sorts of things, but it's an unbelievable innovation. Very proud of our team for launching this.
What about, you mentioned the density, say, on a university campus.
Yeah.
What about, just from a trend point of view, there is more urbanization going on. We're talking about smart cities now with sensors and so forth. How do those kinds of things figure into how you plan for the future or affect you now?
Yeah, we really break up our network into 3 chunks, urban, rural, and suburban. The urban is where all the action is, no offense that I live in the suburbs, but basically the urban situation with sustainability, with everything from bike lanes to apartment buildings to just the growth. I mean, the trend for urbanization is unbelievable. All the young people, everybody's moving into cities, downtown cores are exploding. So we're looking at foot traffic now.
Foot delivery?
So people we've already had a core group of them to deal with companies like Xerox and others over time. Now we're converting them into, take a grid of the ultimate downtown core, the path, for example,
right,
and have them do a bunch of what we call micro deliveries. So have a small area and a small sort of holding tank for inventory and then deliver them from there. And so
I was astonished because I did one of your truck
You
runs
did, yes. Yeah.
around the hospital area, which is all really within walking distance. But I was astonished at the kinds of things that were delivered in there, and he knew everybody.
We took Howard on a route ride, and I don't know why they did it. He took you to the hospitals for some reason. But,
looked like I needed it.
Yeah,
maybe.
but I think that you were amazed, and you should be, because the couriers, their ability to navigate inside a hospital is rare. I mean, the ability to go to surgical departments, know exactly what to do. It's not like we're just flopping stuff at a delivery bay. It's literally an on-site experience. And so we really are, like, our healthcare vertical is a special one for us. It's obviously life and livelihood, and it gets treated with a different type of approach.
Very important things on those trucks. And, as we as we wrap up here, I just want to remind everybody that we will take questions from the audience. We have a couple of roving mics. We'd love it if you got up and we had it interactively. If you prefer, you can write it on a card, but we will come to some of your questions in a minute, so please get ready with some. John, you know, as we turn the corner here, you know, just talking about precious cargo, there's a great story about a cat when we were talking.
We have actually a few stories, but yeah, there was we have a hub go to a terminal, and so lots of sorts. And I just saw the end result was this great story, but apparently there was someone shipped a tire, I believe, and the tire rim. The cat was in there when they shipped it. There was actually a live cat shipped through our network, and
from
I believe it was Halifax
to Montreal.
To Montreal, and anyways, it arrived safely, and our great people detected that cat and ended up sourcing it back to the owner who was missing their cat. And I don't even know if they knew by the time we figured it out, but we got that back. But honestly, there is a story at Purolator, and those that have come before me will tell me the stories at Purolator are just incredible every day. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we had a typical leadership meeting, and our COO, who's probably here today, said, oh, and by the way, a couple things happened. I'm thinking, okay, what are they? And I didn't even know about them. Well, one of our couriers had been delivering into a McDonald's restaurant where someone was having a heart attack. We train a lot of our folks in CPR. Our courier literally saved a guy's life. And he talked about it like, oh yeah, I was just doing a delivery. Oh, guy's having a heart attack, saves his life.
Did you give him a raise?
Of course, Howard, you know.
3 days of journalistic experience coming to the fore there.
Where's Dave Bauer when I need him? Dave, have we signed our contract with Howard yet? And then we had a second one where I believe it was in Scarborough as well area. There was a house fire as someone was delivering, one of our couriers. And they used the fire extinguisher, went into the house while people were still in it with the fire extinguisher from the truck and attempted to put out the fire as well as rescue people from inside that house. We call those hometown heroes, and we celebrate them. And honestly, like, there's so much of this happening, it just makes me so proud of the people and what they do. I've often thought, like, with us being in every nook and cranny of Canada, if there's ever a missing person or problem like that, we're the perfect people to find that, because we literally in every corner.
You're in every postal code.
We're in every postal code, every little town. We have our own people. Yeah.
And you know, it strikes me, I mean, people see the trucks everywhere, but often don't give it a second thought. But you're enabling business, you're enabling people's lives every day. I mean, it sounds corny, but what do you mean to the country?
Well, we're very proud that we're Canadian. There's very few transportation logistics companies that are Canadian-based anymore. So that means we're doing everything with a Canadian lens. We're hiring Canadian jobs. But more importantly, and I didn't even talk about our Tackle Hunger program. I mean, our couriers in the community we donate over 1 million pounds of food to food banks across Canada every year. It's called Tackle Hunger in partnership with the CFL. So every year at the Grey Cup, if you haven't seen us, we're big involved there. And it's all, you know, football players with tears in their eyes about just the fact they love giving back to the communities with us. But that's just one element of what we do. But in terms of commerce in Canada, we're a major player. There's not many goods or services that you would find that didn't run through our kidneys somewhere, that didn't run through our shop. So, you know, we're proud of that. We didn't even talk about our international expansion, but the future for us is going to be building off our Canadian network. We've got people we've hired from DHL recently to help build our Asia business for Asia inbound and outbound, as well as we're focusing on the UK and some other markets. Our US-Canada trade has been around for 25 years. We're an early adopter. And the term we like to use at Purolator is we're a catcher's mitt in Canada for all the volume that comes from around the world. And that's how we see our future strategy, that we build off this network internationally.
That's a great spot to leave it, John. Thanks so much. And let's go to some of your questions here from the audience. We do have some microphones floating around. Anybody ready to go? Oh, we've got a move there. Yeah. Hi. Thank you.
Hi there. Heidi Levitt with Levitt Safety. Just wondering what your 3 biggest short-term tactical challenges are with your e-commerce strategy, and what your 3 long-term biggest challenges are.
Heidi, you know too much as usual. Those are a great question. We call them big rocks. That's the lean word we were using at Purolator, because lean continuous improvement is a big part of our culture. The biggest issue with e-commerce is the peak and dealing with so-called flexible labor. So how do you handle sometimes up to 10 times volume? We could have a customer, for example, say, you do 1,000 shipments a day, or whatever the number is, we want 10 times that in a peak period. So how do you staff up and manage that? 2 is customer access. That means locker boxes, kiosks, mobile quick stop, all the stuff that Lori manages for us, all the things you saw in the video. Basically giving access to people's packages more conveniently. 3 is probably on the technology front, and that's and automation and capacity. I didn't even use the word capacity yet, but we talk about capacity all the time. How are we going to have enough capacity for the growth that we need? Where are the pinch points in our network? We're building a $300 million hub, which will have 3 times flexibility. So if we do 50,000 pieces an hour, it can do 150,000 and scale up to that because of the way it's being designed, as an example. So all of our investment in technology, automation, flexibility, and people is all designed to help us with the growth of e-commerce and our other businesses, which are also converting to e-commerce.
Yeah, Bruce.
How do you think about packaging waste? So one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I do very little online shopping is I'm horrified by the 12 cubic foot
Right on.
box that
Drives me
delivers a
bananas.
tomato. And my next door neighbor needed a second recycling bin in order to get rid of
Yep.
the boxes she accumulated over the
Yep.
course of a week.
We would love it. In fact, we're looking at automation that will take a scan of a package and automatically figure out the perfect size of package, because the one thing that we hate is shipping light product. Feathers in the air is the old term. We talk about cube, meaning we want dense packages. The denser, the better. And so and not only the right thing to do from a green standpoint, of course, and even the image that you have when somebody opens a package. The problem is we can only influence that. It's really the warehousing and distribution, and actually ultimately the shipper themselves who often packages those products. I've worked in a lot of warehousing distribution, I've run those businesses. And part of the problem is, firstly, we have to price for cube, which means we have to watch that we don't price so that people are not de-incented to ship air. So that's on us. The second is those warehouses, though, often don't like to have 10 million boxes laying around. I'm exaggerating. They want standardization, and that's what drives that problem. I think that as we get more sustainable, that's going to go away, I hope. But it's our best interest from a business, even, not only to do the right thing, but it actually kills our network to have air in there and big boxes. Yeah.
We have one over there, John. Hi.
Jacqueline Wu, Deloitte Consulting. My question is kind of building off the ideas of the mobile truck stops. I was wondering if you're considering changes to how you deliver goods to everyday consumers who might expect to receive goods while they're, I don't know, at work or on the go instead of directly to your homes. I don't know about you guys, but I can't count the number of times I've missed a delivery.
Yeah. So we're working on this major project that we've launched called Recipient Solution. And basically it's an online application that will allow you to make choice. So it started with just SMS notification. Your package will arrive at this time, be ready for it. And the total plan on that, the sort of roadmap of that, is to have a bunch of choices. So I want to pick up my package at the end of the GO train line at this time. I'd like to pick up my package from this kiosk or your retail outlet or from the store, from the retailer themselves, or whatever it is. So that's all underway. In fact, I think you guys supported us on it, so thanks for the question. I'm very pleased with your work on that, by the way. And we really know that that's the right thing to do in terms of customer experience. And it's just a matter of phasing it in. We had a couple major retailers trial it, and they've been interesting. The way we've designed it is the branding of our underlying client is on that portal. So it looks like it's their customer experience they're giving, but we're actually generating that.
We have one back here. Hi.
Hi. You spoke a lot about great innovation. What's the best idea you've ever had in your life?
Heidi, that sounds like a YPO question almost. God. Marrying my wife.
There you go. You know how to say the right thing.
I hope that's on camera.
It's across the world on the internet now, and it'll never disappear.
Finally, I got the chance.
Do we have anybody else out there? We still have them. Yes, sir. We'll just wait for the mic if we would. Thanks.
Steve Lister, Imperial Capital. You have a somewhat quirky ownership structure, your largest shareholder being Canada Post, and who you, I guess, compete with. Just curious about that, the competitive landscape and how that all sorts out in the future.
Yeah. We try not to compete with them, and we do a pretty good job not doing that. I didn't really even talk about this, but I'm going to just for a minute before I get into ownership. The reason why we're riding this wave of e-commerce, which I never really hit, was that there's been a trend from the cheap and slow and don't pay for delivery to fast, premium quality, on time, which Purolator had. In a lot of ways, and I don't like to use the word lucked out, but some people before had told me, you know, my friend Mike Wiener said, you know, sometimes you just get lucky, John, you know, and I said, no, it was all work. But anyways, you know, because the market has moved to fast and largely driven by Amazon, they want 2-hour deliveries now, as an example, same day. It's really fortunate that our space is speed, and we already had a network set up to do very fast, efficient, quality service. So that's our differentiator. And the other one that clearly is our international strategy, which is unique to us, and given they're a Crown Corp, we have the ability to do that where they don't. The ownership structure is working well for us in the sense that, let's say we were owned by private equity, and I have lots of friends in private equity in the space in the US. They would never build a hub like this without a 5-year payback, because they're going to end up selling that business in 5 years. So building a hub with a 10-year payback or whatever it is, and the terminals we put in with 8-year paybacks and everything else, that's a big barrier to entry. And because of our ownership structure, we can be Canadian and we can be long-term in our thinking, which is very unique. Trust me, when private equity just tore into this industry. And I don't know many of my colleagues, CEOs, that don't have more than 5-year. Everything's 5 years because we're selling. So in my time, in my opinion, we've been more independent than maybe other cycles and regimes. And you can see by this investment, when we announced $1 billion investment, it's for our customers, but it's also for our employees. And it's a big sign of confidence in long term. Nobody's going to invest $1 billion in 5 years if you're not going to be around for the next 50 years. That hub, by the way, that we're replacing, they can last up to 30 years. We're designing it for that long of a time, you know, be well after my time. So very long term in its nature, and we're looked at as an asset. Now, if you think about around the world, Deutsche Post, DHL, Royal Mail, GLS, mail companies that have struggled with mail volumes and the whole disruption there have taken their money and gone into supply chain and logistics and transportation. Canada did the same thing years ago. So that's a good question, though.
We got to leave it there. We're out of time. But it's been great talking to you, John. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for delivering such an inspiring message on the transformation journey that Purolator has undergone. Purolator's historic investment in Canada's growth and competitiveness speaks to its commitment to truly deliver on your promises to your customers. With your plan to transform the digital experience for customers, you send a signal that innovation and creativity are critical success factors. Consumers and businesses are already faced with doing things differently in the digital age. Our desires are but a click away, as you pointed out. And you rightly argue that this should be no different in the delivery business that enables it. We wish you much continued success as you lead the company through an exciting and very prosperous future. And Howard, We were suitably impressed by your exceptional moderation of a very dynamic conversation, in spite of just 3 days of experience at it. And so before we close, I would like to extend warm thanks again to our sponsors today from Warner Chappell. I would also like to thank MediaEvents.ca, Canada's online event space, and VVC for live streaming today's event. Thank you for being with us today, and hope to see you again soon.